Imagine stepping onto the world's absolute biggest financial stage, gearing up for a massive initial public offering, all while you are actively ignoring a ticking time bomb of unaddressed liability sitting right there in your own boardroom. I mean, it is the ultimate corporate high-wire act, and the stakes, they literally could not be higher. Before we unpack exactly how this situation is unfolding, if you enjoy content like this, please take a moment to like, subscribe, follow, and turn on notifications so you'll always know when new content is released.
Now, right up front, we have a mandatory legal update as we continue to monitor the Martin Stevens versus OpenAI matter. It's important to note that, as of right now, this is still not a lawsuit. However, Martin Stevens has officially suspended his voluntary quiet period after OpenAI filed its confidential S-1 registration statement on June 8, 2026. They did this without first engaging with him, despite having nearly a month since his final notice and more than a year since his initial notifications. Stevens views this decision to proceed without any direct interaction as a sign of extreme disrespect. Because of this, he stated he will not re-enter a quiet period unless it's part of a formal agreement. At the time of this recording, no settlement discussions or negotiations have been publicly confirmed. We can also definitively report that the dead man switch has not been activated, meaning Martin Stevens remains safe from both a physical and legal standpoint. We'll obviously provide updates if any of those circumstances change. Now, in this explainer, we are actually not going to dwell on the specifics of Stevens' evidence or his case because honestly, we've explored those system vulnerabilities pretty thoroughly in the past. Instead, today we're concentrating heavily on the absolute stakes, the severe consequences of a continued non-response from OpenAI, and the sensible outcome they have to work toward to prevent an irreversible catastrophe, especially citing the historic ignoring of Stevens throughout this entire process.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1, the historic silence. To really grasp the pressure here, you have to look at the stark contrast in communication. So on one side of the ledger, you've got Stevens' incredibly aggressive outreach. We're talking over a year of formal legal notices, certified mail packages, 2 actual published books, reproducibility test results, and highly detailed reform proposals. It's a remarkably well-documented mobilization. And on the flip side, OpenAI's response, just complete human silence, thinly patched over by automated replies. This historic ignoring of Stevens isn't just a detail, it is the fundamental context that makes the current standoff so explosive.
Let's move right along to Section 2, the S-1 ticking clock. Now take a look at how quickly this escalated. This timeline proves just how tightly the window for a private resolution has closed. You have those initial notifications over a year ago, which built up to a final notice in May 2026. And then, bam, the critical pivot point, June 8, 2026, when OpenAI filed its confidential S-1 IPO. We're currently sitting in this highly sensitive, tight confidential phase. But once that phase ends, this timeline blasts off into a highly public, entirely unpredictable future. Which brings us to a really telling quote. Stevens views OpenAI's decision to proceed with a confidential IPO filing without first engaging as a sign of extreme disrespect. Because of this exact filing, Stevens explicitly identified the S-1 as a definitive trigger event. That filing officially suspended his voluntary quiet period, abruptly ripping this dispute out of a holding pattern and throwing it straight into an active mobilization.
All right, Section 3, escalating the stakes.
So how is Stevens reacting to that tightened window? He's rapidly escalating his leverage right now. He is actively out there interviewing heavyweight national law firms, the kind that specialize in AI and emerging tech liabilities. By pooling vast tech sector resources and legal data with these specialized retainers, Stevens is basically unlocking the potential for a massive financial settlement. But even more importantly, he's building the raw leverage required to force actual structural corporate reform.
And you absolutely cannot ignore his leverage with the media. Listen to this. Not yet. Check back soon if I don't reach out to you. This is the exact, frankly ominous response Stevens has been feeding to major mainstream media outlets who are begging for exclusive interviews. It clearly shows he's holding a massive, synchronized public relations campaign in reserve, keeping it right at the brink of deployment so he can time his strike perfectly. Let's explore Section 4, Consequences of Non-Response.
I want you to focus on this number for a second. 7. That represents the 7 active wrongful death lawsuits currently filed against OpenAI, and that's sitting alongside multiple other lawsuits alleging severe psychological harm and dependency. This is the incredibly volatile, highly dangerous litigation landscape that OpenAI is already battling as they march toward going public.
Because here's the immediate catastrophic consequence of OpenAI continuing its historic silence. Stevens is fully prepared to legally share his massive evidentiary archive with those other active litigants.
He's holding complete account, exports, metadata, interaction logs, you name it, all the reproducibility testing records. By weaponizing his extensive record of system vulnerabilities, Stevens can drastically compound OpenAI's existing legal threats exactly when they are at their most financially vulnerable.
Which leads us to our final section, Section 5, the sensible outcome. So, what's the logical release valve here? To prevent a totally irreversible corporate catastrophe, OpenAI sensibly needs to follow 3 distinct steps. Step 1, acknowledge and engage with Stevens. Step 2, negotiate a private settlement. Step 3, implement strict safety reforms. They absolutely have to secure this private resolution before the public IPO phase kicks in and permanently exposes this massive liability to their future shareholders.
But listen, a sensible resolution here isn't just about cutting a check. It is fundamentally about forcing essential structural safety reforms to protect all future users. Stevens is flat out demanding long-term oversight, independent monitoring, robust AI literacy initiatives, and perhaps most importantly, established certified safety education for users before they are even allowed to interact with these systems.
So this leaves us with the million-dollar or maybe billion-dollar question. Will OpenAI pivot to this sensible resolution in time, or will they blindly trigger an irreversible corporate disaster by maintaining their historic silence? The clock is ticking loudly right up until that IPO goes public. If you found this explainer valuable, please like, subscribe, share, follow, and turn on notifications. It really helps us continue bringing you content like this and ensures you never miss future releases.